Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Reier on YouTube channel. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News. Travis Reier along, and be sure to like and subscribe that Reier on YouTube channel. It's hot right now with all kinds of live content here on the day before Thanksgiving. I don't think Travis, if you follow Travis on Twitter, you know that he's been kind of stapled to that chair here for a while and turning out all sorts of content the day before Thanksgiving. But Talkin Tide up next on Reier on YouTube, and a lot to get into, Travis. Obviously, an Iron Bowl preview. The Crimson Tide taking on the arch rivals on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium in a game with not the stakes Alabama probably was quite hoping for, coming off a loss to Oklahoma that was one of the most dismal UA performances I've seen in a couple decades or more. You too, I'm sure. So we'll delve into that as well. But a lot to get into here on this Thanksgiving edition of Talkin Tide.
Yeah, we're thankful for our live viewers that are already chiming in here. Chase in the show chat, Bob Rutherford, good old Bob checking in, and Bino checking in as well. If you'd like to jump on board in the show chat with your questions or comments, we'll try our best to get to those as we move throughout the program. As you might guess, Chase, some of the programs have been lively with reaction since Saturday night. Been a little hot. You said it's been hot. Yeah. It's the temperature of the fan base, Chase. Been a little warm. Been running a little warm in the last 3 or 4 days.
No question. Let's just go ahead and start there, right? We'll get to the Iron Bowl. Had Alabama beaten Oklahoma, we'd probably be starting with the Iron Bowl. But how can you not start with whatever that was in Norman from Alabama? Did not show up. They lose 24-3. The offense, significantly bigger problem than the defense, in my estimation. But the defense wasn't great either. I mean, look, I get it. You know, one could argue that the defense really only gave up 10 points, right? 10 first half points. Put all those on the defense. That's fine. Second half, you got a pick six. You got another touchdown by Oklahoma that came off another interception, another turnover that put the defense on a semi-short field, right? You'd like to have seen the defense maybe force another field goal in the second half off of that touchdown that OU scored. But still, and we'll get to the offense. The offense was the biggest debacle. But defensively for Alabama, Travis, despite their ability to force a couple field goal attempts, force a turnover on a fumble early in the game, still gave up 250 on the ground against a team that they knew wasn't going to throw it a ton, and they didn't throw it a ton. 12 pass attempts.
Didn't have to.
No.
Never made them one-dimensional, which should have been the underlying, or not underlying, but overstated goal of the whole week, because this was a team devoid of healthy wide receivers. It's a team that if you make them pass protect in pass obvious situations, not very good in that regard. This is one of the very worst offenses in the Southeastern Conference. So I'm not giving the defense a pass. I haven't all week. I have caught some grief from some Alabama fans hitting me with some of the same thing about, well, you know, if you look at it just in terms of points, from the opening snap last Saturday night, Oklahoma pushed Alabama around. They ran for over 200 yards in the first half. That was an offense that went into the game averaging 96 rushing yards per SEC game. They more than doubled that in the first half. So absolutely, would I say the offense maybe a little bit more of the issue? Sure, probably more than a little bit. But the defense doesn't get to hide, in my opinion. The second half you can really look at and say, boy, the numbers got better. Oklahoma didn't have to do anything offensively in the second half. All Oklahoma had to do in the second half was possess the football enough and not beat themselves. And they didn't do either. And sure, like you said, after the first interception, if you're that much decidedly better than the people you're going against, get off the field, force a field goal. And that didn't happen. It was a total failure. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, since we're specifically on the defense here from the outset, Chase, it was especially bad because you didn't really have to commit much to Oklahoma throwing the ball. Felt like you could have just said, look, we're going to man you guys up because you don't have anybody at the receiver positions.
Right.
We'll put an 8 in the box. But I'd be damned if I was going to get it run down my throat for an entire half and beyond Saturday night.
Kane Womack on Monday said a couple things that raised my brow. One of them being he said, look, against an off, and I don't buy this. I understand that a quarterback who is athletic enough to be part of the running game creates problems for the defense, creates an extra gap to defend. I understand all that. But Womack said, look, you're going to give up yards in that situation. Well, not necessarily, right? Like you said, stack the box, however you got to stack the box. Play 4 legit DLs instead of 3.
They go. He still goes with a 3-man front, which that's okay. But I still don't understand the damn wolf position. The guy standing in the A gap, the B gap, and meanwhile you can't set an edge because you're light,
right?
Or you've got a guy that shouldn't be on the edge. I understand there's times where it's looked great. I understand that players have to take accountability. I'm sure there were things that were not executed the way they were supposed to, but against that offense in that situation with everything on the line, I don't give a damn what we talked about all week. If it starts playing out in a game where I'm getting gashed, like you said, 8-9, man up on the outside, and let's see if you can beat it. Because, Jackson Arnold isn't J.C. Watts, okay? He's not Tim Tebow. He's not Marcel Reed.
He's Charles Thompson.
Any of those guys. He's not Lenore Sellers. No, not Charles Thompson either.
Yeah.
And so that's for the old heads out there, by the way.
That's right. That's what I am, and you too.
We love it. But it was mind blowing to me, and it wasn't this surprise attack of Oklahoma coming off the bye week, and having installed this sort of Vanderbilt approach. And yeah, some of it had Vandy look to it. What did you think they were going to do? What do you think teams do late in the season coming off bye weeks before they see you? They go and look at everything that has worked against you, and hey, we'll have some of that in our stuff coming off a bye week. It was just totally inexcusable on every level, and I'm not throwing it all on Kane Womack. I mean,
we're just getting started. We haven't even gotten to the offense yet.
Player accountability, especially in this era too. Where players have more control and power over their day-to-day lives and their preparation, and are they mature enough to basically do it in a way that's more along the lines? It's more like the NFL now. Players aren't hanging around facilities like they used to because players have money in their pocket now. The great thing about facilities and the upgrades that you saw for all those years was that they were done in part because it was a way to keep players in the facility all the time.
Right.
And players were happy to do it because it was probably a good bit nicer and, amenity wise, certainly, and every other way than maybe their apartment or their dorm room. Well, it's not like that in today's college football. So as soon as they can leave the facility, they're leaving the facility. And, that's fine. But it's going to go back more on the players to be accountable in terms of their preparation and making sure they're semi-engaged even when they leave the building.
Turning to the UA offense in this one, Travis, 3 points. The last time Alabama scored 3 points in a game 20 years ago, 2004, would have been a Mike Shula team, right? So just a dismal performance on offense. came out, popped a field goal early. wasn't a pretty good drive to get that one started. Did not score another point. Oklahoma went on a 24-0 run the rest of the game after that. Couldn't throw it. Couple of drops. Couldn't get the running game going. Nick Sheridan was determined to get Milroe established as part of the running game early. OU was waiting for that. They shut that down.
Mm-hmm.
I've said all year that the offense is at its best when Milroe is a big part of the run game. So, from that standpoint, hats off to OU for shutting him down first. But they were waiting for him. They couldn't get it going on the ground, couldn't throw it. A couple drops. CJ Dupree had a drop. Ryan Williams had a drop. They never got any rhythm. They never got anything going. And things, for the defense, things were bad in the first half, got a little better, and got better in the second half. For the offense, things were bad in the first half, got worse in the second half.
It was like Tennessee that way, except for the defense. It was a little bit of a reverse. I thought the defense in Knoxville was good. I mean, 7-0 game, something like that, right? Or at the half. And then, to me, the defense wasn't good at all in the first half. I know it was just 10-3, but you also got schoolhoused on the double pass that if OU can keep it on the field, right, it's not 10-3, it's 14-3. And also in terms of, are you legit, sort of a validation possession there late in the first half, you give it up, going into the half, late on a run. So it wasn't good for the defense. Points be damned. It was not good for the defense in the first half. You're right. It looked better in the second half. I absolutely agree, though. For the offense, it never really happened. Now, you can say, well, Ryan Williams, an inch more, a shorter foot or a smaller foot, maybe that's a touchdown that they get there instead of the field goal. But no, they never found it. It almost felt like they felt really good about what they did at LSU. So let's just kind of roll that right over to OU. But OU isn't built that way defensively like LSU. If nothing else, OU is going to be stout against the run. And Venables is going to have, especially those linebackers ready. And once Milroe couldn't run, you're correct. It just it wasn't going to happen for the Alabama offense.
Pick six, obviously huge. Alabama comes out in that third quarter. They give up. They throw back-to-back interceptions. Travis, of course, the first one ended up being an Oklahoma touchdown. Not the pick six. The pick six was the second one. But got to address that Milroe missed tackle. That was the worst thing I've seen.
Well, it wasn't missed. It was. Yeah. It wasn't really attempted.
It wasn't tried.
No, yeah. I said earlier this week, if that had been soccer, he wouldn't even have drawn a yellow card for that slide tackle.
Just so bad.
And in the end, I wouldn't have been surprised if Kalen DeBoer gave him a red card for the rest of the game after that. That was as bad as it gets. I mean, that was as bad a look as it gets. And I like Jalen, and I think, he probably gets a little bit too much of the blame at times, but at that point, that was indefensible. And I would have been totally fine if, even in a 24-3 game, and I know you're in desperation mode and you feel like you got to just stick with your best because things are rapidly deteriorating, even with all of that, I would have been fine with Kalen saying, you know what, we might need to go ahead and get Ty Simpson a series here. Not saying we're going to sit Jalen for the rest of this game, but in this particular instance, let's give him a chance to kind of maybe reflect for a minute.
Horrific effort. All he had to do was shove him out of bounds. Didn't need a perfect form tackle or anything of the sort. Plays to be made right there on the sideline. Whatever he tried was awful. Some people thought it was a little dirty, as a matter of fact. I don't know how dirty it was, maybe so, but great beyond that, and more important than that, it was just an awful effort. You and I.
You're a captain. You're a captain. Two-time captain. And that's the best you got with the season on the line?
You and I have always been loath to lay criticism directly at the feet of players individually. And I understand, and for good reason. But here in 2024, Travis, talking about a guy that's I know is making seven figures in NIL, and that's the best you can do to get somebody out of bounds on a pick that you've thrown.
And I still am hesitant to go there, even in the NIL era, in the basically professionalization of college football. But I'm less hesitant for sure now.
Yeah.
And you're a veteran too. You're not a true freshman. You're a veteran player. You're a two-time captain. So you get what you get in the aftermath of that. So look, it's a big week coming up. I know we're going to get into Auburn a little bit, but it's a big week in terms of legacy for some people and some potential legacies looking at the big picture. I think for some people, it doesn't matter what Jalen does this week. But I think it's important that he rebound and perform in a way that is representative of not only the position he plays at Alabama, but again, that permanent captainship. When you go to Denny Chimes and you look at the people that are footprinted and handprinted in that area right there, it means something.
I might have talked to a former Alabama player whose hands and cleat prints might already be represented around Denny Chimes, who said after the game, and specifically about Milroe's effort on that pick six, that he wanted some wet cement going back over there. Yeah. So, I asked DeBoer about it directly on Monday.
I got you credit.
It
needed to be asked.
He said he's got to make the play. No kidding. I specifically used the word effort. What about the effort? And he really didn't address the effort other than to say that play's got to be made. Milroe too. I asked Milroe about it Tuesday, and he just said, "I've got to make that play." He couldn't quite bring out of him what I think needed to be said, what I think Alabama fans needed to hear or wanted to hear.
Kudos. But it had to be. It needed to be asked, and good on you. We got Bino here in the show chat, and look, we're not trying to pile. This isn't a bash Jalen Milroe edition of Talkin Tide, but I mean it's been a major storyline certainly in the days since. Norman Bino says, "What about Milroe being a ball hog, not giving it up on option plays? Do you think his NIL is performance based?" No, Bino, I'm not going to go that far. Here's what I think about Jalen. I think Jalen has been significantly empowered in this offense. I think I went into this thinking, boy, there's going to be some guardrails in place based on what we've seen previously from Kalen DeBoer. I think he's been handed the keys for the most part, as much as they feel like they can. Now, I don't think in terms of pre-snap checks and things like that, you still see him look over there to get checks, but decision-making on RPO, progression when he throws the football. And I don't think it's selfishness with Jalen, Chase. I don't know about you. I think Jalen guesses a lot. I think he has some predetermined sort of ideas about things pre-snap, and that's the way it's going to go, whether it's zone read, if he's reading it, and otherwise. I don't know about you.
I don't think it's selfishness either. He's such a phenomenal athlete. He thinks he can bail himself out of just about any jam. Sometimes I think he recognizes that he can't, maybe a step too late. But at any rate, it was a rough one for him. He does need to bounce back against the Auburn Tigers. We will turn to the Iron Bowl now. Here, 19 minutes into the program, we're going to turn to the big game.
The
Auburn,
big game.
Right.
Air quotes.
Should have been bigger, but it is what it is. Travis, at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama going for, I believe, what would be their 5th consecutive Iron Bowl victory, and looking to get that 9th win on the regular season. Auburn, Travis, coming off their most impressive performance of the year, beating A&M.
They are. and they're feeling it a little bit on the Plains, aren't they? Kind of when I heard some of the comments coming from Auburn early in the week, my first thought was, and there's why Nick Saban did not allow true freshmen to talk to the media after the Plexico Burress incident
Right.
at Michigan State. But look, it adds some spice, and it may end up being a huge favor to Kalen DeBoer because we really don't know, how his teams can respond to certain situations. That, frankly, to this point, and understanding it's year one, some of these things are going to take time, even from that dynamic. It hasn't been exceptionally encouraging in terms of bounce back for Alabama this season, but you shouldn't need a lot of motivation this week, especially as much as anything after the performance that you put forth last Saturday, regardless of who the opponent is this week. That shouldn't be an issue. But if you're Auburn, you should be confident too. You've won a couple games in a row. You've looked at Alabama on tape. I'm thinking if you're Auburn, what you saw last Saturday night from Alabama was a soft football team that you feel like we can match up with these guys. We do some things conceptually, offensively and defensively that align with Vanderbilt, that align with what Oklahoma did, and be confident going into this one.
Yeah, let's not forget in last year's Iron Bowl down on the Plains, Peyton Thorne gave Alabama trouble as a runner himself.
Right.
Especially in the second half, if I recall correctly. And I think he can run the ball every bit as good as Jackson Arnold can. Don't know how much he'll be involved in that. But, yeah, between Thorne and Jarquez Hunter, who's had a phenomenal year. Jarquez Hunter, the second leading rusher in the SEC. He's got 1,145 yards. That's second only to Dylan Sampson. And Jarquez Hunter has given Alabama hell before.
Nearly 230 in the last two games against Alabama. He's averaging almost 10 yards a carry.
He likes that Iron Bowl pretty good, doesn't he?
He likes that Iron Bowl pretty good. And he's a yards per carry guy anyway. He can house it on you. So, again, when Auburn thinks about, okay, pieces we need, and no Deontay Lawson, which we should have probably talked about by now, but no Deontay Lawson in the middle of that defense running the show and kind of holding things together.
Yeah.
You understand quick why Auburn feels pretty good going in. Now, do I still think Auburn is a better football team than Alabama? No. Alabama's playing at home. Alabama has a history in this series, especially in the last 15 years or so, of just absolutely hammering Auburn at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So there's some things there that still make you think Alabama should win this game, which is what I believe. But it shouldn't be a tough sell for Hugh Freeze this week in getting his team to really not just hope they can win, but believe it.
I'm sure it won't be a hard sell at all. Also of note, Auburn's finally got Cam Coleman hot, right? Yeah. The five-star wide receiver who was really pretty silent for most of the season. They couldn't get him going. Auburn's offense has been pretty dismal for most of the year. Well, Travis, Cam Coleman's got 30 catches on the year, half of them, 15 of them in the last two games.
Yeah, he and really the Hunter and Thorne the last couple of games have been what I think Auburn fans thought that three-headed deal could be throughout the season. But absolutely, he has ramped it up. And, that'll be a big part of things on Saturday, too. We've got Jacob in here checking in, too, in the show chat, Chase, who says, how much of the problems with the OU game were the O-line didn't block well and couldn't pass protect? No, I mean, the lines of scrimmage on both sides, for me, went decidedly to Oklahoma. I mean, first half, Oklahoma had 5 tackles for loss. Alabama had 0. I mean, it got a little better in the second half. I think Alabama had 4 when they finally just said, look, we're going to get after you in the run game. If you take shots, whatever.
Neither one of the tackles played well.
No,
there's been a lot of games this year where Caden Proctor's played pretty damn well on the left side and Pritchett hadn't. Well, in this one, neither one of them played good.
Well, and Pritchett, it just feels like even going back to a couple of 8 days ago when he struggled, I think it was 2023 or something. And the 8A scrimmage just got wrecked because it was a problem for him. But it feels like once it starts to go downhill with Pritchett, there ain't no coming back from it. Once the toothpaste is out of the, I don't know if it's a physical stamina thing, like as the game goes on, he just can't sustain it. I don't think he's an elite offensive tackle. That's not what I'm implying here at all either. But sure, it was a problem. And I'll tell you what, man, Alabama tried to run some of those pullers and some of that stuff. I saw Tyler Booker get stoned in a way I haven't seen many times in the last couple of years. So, yes, the tackles and pass protection were a problem, but physicality across the board was an issue for Alabama on both lines of scrimmage.
Kind of flipped around with OU, right? I mean, we are during OU's run through the Big 12 over the last decade or whatever. It's generally been a program where the offense could light you up and the defense has been soft. And they come to the SEC year one, and it was flipped around. Offense a mess, but defense pretty tough.
That's Venables. I mean, going from Lincoln Riley to Venables. That's culture. That's a mindset. Now, I'm still not convinced that Brent Venables is the big picture answer as the head coach at Oklahoma. But if a game's going to come down to kind of whether or not his front seven is ready to go and has a good plan, I do like his chances in those games.
Yeah. Offense, sticking with Alabama's offense here for just a minute as it pertains to the Auburn game coming up, Travis. Obviously, getting the ball to Ryan Williams is big. We've seen what an impact he can make. Should have had a touchdown against – we keep going back to OU. We can't get away from OU. Should have had a touchdown in that game. Horrific call. That in my opinion anyway, that erased that one. But they got to get Ryan Williams involved in this game against Auburn. I would expect it. Look, if I'm Auburn defensively, I'm doing the same thing OU did, right? Yes. Do everything you can to shut down Milroe. Put 8 in the box if you got to. Dare him to throw and see what he can do. That's what Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan need to be expecting. Is that they are going to have to throw to move the football.
Get after those tackles with the pass rush, switch up the looks, drop a hanging defender. Maybe Jalen throws it to him. And look, it's not all on Jalen. That first interception on the wide receiver screen, that was awful. I don't know what the deal was there for Kobe Prentice, but there was a bust of some kind. With a guy untouched, it just able to jump the quick screen. Tempo and the quick passing game the last couple of years, to me, it hasn't been what you would like. Tempo doesn't operate as efficiently or as smoothly as you would like it to. And I just don't think right now, anyway, the quick game is Jalen's thing. There's a reason why we didn't see it last year. We didn't really see the quick game. RPO game to the flats, things like that. That just didn't seem to fit him last year. But going back to what we talked about earlier, Kalen and Nick Sheridan were obviously convinced at some point that we can do everything we want to do with Jalen Milroe. And I think there have been flashes where that's been the case. But in terms of game in, game out, series in, series out, it just hasn't happened.
Also, Travis, as it pertains to this Alabama offense, to me anyway, what I've seen over the course of the season from September, October, now into November, obviously what you'd like to see with any unit, but I'm talking about the wide receiving core in this instance, you want to see a proliferation, right? If you start the year with a couple guys you can lean on and other guys developing, you want to finish the year with 4 guys you can lean on, 5 guys you can lean on. It's been the reverse, right? It seems like this wide receiving core has boiled down to Williams and Bernard, right?
Well, and we saw some of that with Cole Adams, but then it was like,
where's Emmanuel Henderson gone?
I know, but it was like, well, is it because Cole Adams is really emerging, or is it because Kobe Prentice is sliding?
Right.
Or Emmanuel Henderson is still developing as a wide receiver, because we know in high school he wasn't a wide receiver. What about Kendrick Law? I mean, no, your point's valid. So it's easy to think, well,
haven't gotten Caleb Odom going.
No, and I still wonder about. I think big picture that'll be fine. I don't see him as a true number one, a true X. So I see him as more of a Jeremy Bernard type at some point. A really good two, a Z. Maybe play him inside. I've made the comp to Evan Ingram, who is a tight end in the NFL, but is really a wide receiver in terms of how he's used. But no, I mean, I think it's a great point you make there with the wide receivers, and it kind of goes back to thinking, well, if Jalen Hale would have been healthy and available, it could have changed it. Well, I don't know if you can say that for sure based on how we've seen guys sort of come and go here.
No question about it. All right, Alabama headed into the Iron Bowl at 8-3. Travis, let's bounce around the rest of the league really quickly, as we always do to close out the show here on Reier on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Reier on YouTube channel. You can get notifications for all of our podcasts here at Talkin Tide, a whole bunch of other fantastic content that Travis is generating on that YouTube page. Around the league, Travis, looking ahead, Texas A&M, certainly a big one. SEC championship game berth on the line there. A&M, despite 3 losses, can prance right into Atlanta if they can knock off the Longhorns head-to-head. I think they can do it.
Me too.
My spread pick of the week in the T News is A&M plus 5.5. I'm trying to close out the season on a 6-week heater, by the way.
Nice.
And I think they'll get that done. I think we'll see A&M in that SEC title game. I just got a feeling at Kyle Field, and for as long as it's been since they've played, as much animosity as there is between those programs, I just feel like Steve Sarkisian is taking his team into a snake pit.
Well, I made the comp earlier today on Second Helping with Brent Beard. This almost feels a little bit like Alabama Auburn 1989 when Alabama went down to Jordan Hare,
right,
to go on campus against the Tigers down there. Kind of feels that way. Even A&M being the ag school, in that rivalry kind of matches up. No, I'm with you. I talked myself into on Second Helping this morning during the course of our conversation about that game. By the end of it, I had convinced myself Texas A&M is going to win that game. As a wise man once told both of us, maybe on the deck of a wing joint on the west side of Duval, home dogs have teeth.
Yes.
I think this one does. Donald, by the way, here in the show chat, he doesn't appreciate that 1989 reference.
No, that was a rough one.
I ought to not do that, huh, Donald? Yeah.
30-20 was that the final, Travis? 30-20.
Yeah. Curry had that fake field goal for him, though.
Bill Curry.
Yeah.
Yes. So I like A&M to win that. Yeah. Is there an SEC campus anywhere that's not going to be pulling for A&M? No campus in the league is going to want to see A&M win a league title in their first year in the league.
Oh, geez.
I think across the league footprint, Travis, they're all going to be Aggies fans, are they not?
Yeah, and look, you don't really know what the deal is with Quinn Ewers. He's not 100%. And one thing I feel comfortable about with a Mike Elko defense is that they'll get to your quarterback. And it's a different deal. I know you can look at A&M and, well, look at the struggles here down the stretch. Well, that was on the road, both those games, South Carolina, Auburn. I think it'll be a different deal at Kyle Field on Saturday night. I'm with you. I'm on the Aggies.
Tennessee at Vanderbilt. The Vols looking to stay in the hunt for that college football playoff berth. They're obviously in much better position now than they were a week ago after these upsets, Travis. Ole Miss getting beat by Florida, Alabama getting beat by Oklahoma. I mean, it's just been – and Auburn beating Texas A&M. Really, the door got flung open for Tennessee. Tennessee looked like they were on the outside looking in with the playoff 7 days ago. And then this past weekend, all of a sudden, 3 teams ahead of them probably. All catch that third loss, and now Vols are in good shape. But Vanderbilt's not going to roll over in Nashville.
They won't. And, they're offensively made up in a way where they can take advantage of aggressive defenses or defenses that maybe don't have as good an eye discipline like what they did to an extent against Alabama a while back. So it's a game you have to be careful with. I think, though, when you think about Tennessee defensively and also the ability to just hand the ball to Dylan Sampson, it's going to come down to whether or not Vanderbilt can make Tennessee uncomfortable and put more on Nico and a wide receiver core that's been beat up all season and not especially impressive. If they can do that, maybe the Commodores have a shot. Vandy's been pretty tough at home this season, right? I mean, South Carolina's really, best I can recall, the only team that's gone in there and kind of taken them apart. Texas didn't really do it. Alabama certainly didn't do it. So, it could be a grinder.
South Carolina's hot. South Carolina hadn't lost since they were in Bryant-Denny, right? Yeah. If I'm not mistaken.
That's one of the things that's helping keep Alabama probably in this thing. You talked about how last weekend it looked like Tennessee was out. If you're Alabama right now, you're kind of hoping for that same type of week. Maybe a Syracuse knocks off a Miami, or, you get a couple of those type of games. South Carolina could help you with Clemson maybe this weekend.
South Carolina beating Clemson would help Alabama. Vanderbilt knocking off Tennessee obviously would help Alabama. I think if you're an Alabama fan and you're wondering which games help, which ones don't, I think Alabama needs Texas to beat A&M.
They do,
right? Because if A&M beats Texas, they're still going to put Texas, I think, in the playoff with 2 losses, right?
Right.
So I think if you're an Alabama fan and you're hoping that the Crimson Tide can somehow backdoor this thing with 3 losses, you want Texas to put A&M out of it.
Right.
You want Vanderbilt to get that upset in Nashville, and like you said, a South Carolina win over Clemson wouldn't hurt either.
No, and I think we're both in agreement. We're not expecting Texas to get it done, and I think we're going with the upset pick there. But in that unenviable position of sitting around and hoping, but you got to beat Auburn first for any of it to matter. And I'm not ready to just rubber stamp that pick.
No, who can? After last week, you can't rubber stamp that at all.
I mean, South Carolina gave Alabama the kind of game that I could see Auburn giving Alabama on Saturday. I think Alabama's going to win the game, but it could be harrowing, as they say.
Yeah, Alabama, if you just look at what Alabama has done objectively, they don't deserve to go to the playoff. No. You don't lose to Vanderbilt on the road. You don't lose they lost to Oklahoma. They blew it.
You lost to 2 5-loss teams.
No question. It comes down to, is the 3-loss field going to get so crowded that the committee has to take a 3-loss team?
And in a beauty contest, Alabama's still going to win that. And if you want to talk about metrics, then I think that's where Alabama can legitimately stand up.
The strength of schedule would help them. Yeah. They'll be at the front. They'll be at or very near the front of the line.
Everybody would scream Bama bias and start brand and all, but the metrics, the actual football metrics in a situation where you've got a gaggle of 3-loss teams, you might not like it, but you'd have a hard time arguing against it.
No question about it. Alabama taking on Auburn at home on Saturday. Looking forward to the Iron Bowl. Looking forward to some turkey on Thanksgiving as well. Want to wish our viewers and listeners all the best with this holiday week. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your Thanksgiving feast. And, of course, enjoy the Iron Bowl. Enjoy that Friday Egg Bowl, too. I hate, Travis, that Egg Bowl's moved off of Thanksgiving. I don't like that.
I know, I don't either.
But it's appointment television anyway.
I get the Dolphins and the Packers, though, Thanksgiving night. So I'm a college person, first and foremost. Don't get it twisted. But if I have to have an NFL substitute, kind of a Splenda game.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
I'm not upset with Tua taking on the Packers from Lambeau.
I'll be disappointed. I'm always happy though. As long as the Egg Bowl can deliver 8 personal fouls, I'm happy.
Oh my goodness.
All right, that'll do it for us here on this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast. Be sure to join us once again next week as Travis and I will recap the Iron Bowl and look ahead to whatever may lay in wait postseason-wise for the Crimson Tide. For Travis Reier, I'm Chase Goodbread of the Tuscaloosa News. We will talk to you next time right here on Talkin Tide.